Hello and welcome to the Influencer Cup. This is Steve Dolman of the YYT, and I'm joined by Andrew Campbell, also of the YYT. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Stephen. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. For your this evening's entertainment, we've got Sascha Stark, part of Team Belias. Sascha's glancing upwards. I guess he wants to see the perspective of an FFTCG card looking up at a player. Against Nicolas Larrouy, top 4 Worlds player, who's on YRP today. A little bit about each of the decks while they're shuffling up. I'll take Sascha's side, I suppose, because it's a deck quite close to my heart. Sascha's playing Fire, Wind, FFTA. It takes a lot of the staples of Mono Wind, I guess the sort of Y'shtolas and Aeriths and the Mono Wind Hate Bears, but also plays the very powerful Fire cards, and obviously his team is championing the card 1CP Belias, meaning that if his team wins the overall tournament, that card is going to become a delicious full art promo for the whole world. Do you want to say a few words about Nicolas's deck?
Nicolas is playing Water Wind YRP. It has been a consistent deck, probably from about Opus 3 onwards, but
yeah, I think
Opus 7.
Yeah, it was. To be honest, it was a good deck in Opus 2 as well. But yes, it's a real powerful combo with a little bit of aggressive archetype that I don't think has really lost an awful lot of ground as we've moved into this Opus. So
Nicolas is supporting the Pandemonium.
Of course, yeah. 1CP Pandemonium is sort of cousin of Veilfor for doing these big board clear turns. And yeah, the players, don't worry, they're socially distanced by a distance of a couple of 100 miles, one being in France, one being in Germany. So don't worry about that. Shuffling's just about complete. Time to roll off. Nicolas has got dice. I think the strategy for this is, both of these decks being fairly tempo-oriented and both playing wind, you really want to go first because there's a magical backup number, and I think that both decks kind of go off once they start their turn with a certain number of backups. So, opening hands.
Yep. And Sascha is going to take the play.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that virtually always it's the correct thing to do between any two decks. Nicolas is really pondering this one over, but it doesn't seem too happy with what he sees. Well, I think the strength of YRP is really quite dependent on seeing your Yuna and your Riku very early on, which often comes from being able to search out pain early on. So Sascha's drawn for turn, discarding Legend Cloud and Diabolos. Both of them perfectly good cards, and in the right shell you can even recur them later on, even in this archetype, but they're not particularly good to see on turn 1. So Norstalen is a very powerful backup generating card. Can search for a huge variety of backups in practically every element multiple times over. And here goes for Meath.
Meath is such a great choice in Firewind. Not only is it searchable through Norstalen, which creates such a great backup engine, but you can search either part of the Marsh Ritz combo, which is one of the premium Firewind options.
It's absolutely like the most meta-defining combination this Opus, yeah. The fact that so much of this deck, most of the really good mono wind cards, or I say mono wind cards that are typical in mono wind, are in here, and most of them cost 3, but being able to use spare cards or 2 early cards to find these incredibly aggressive FFTA components is powerful as well. Kind of surprising, I suppose, to see 2 backups on turn 1 from Sascha. It hints that he's got the third even costed backup in hand to elegantly play next turn.
Yeah, it's quite good to make sure you get your Ritzes early on in the game, so if you get a position where Nicolas goes for early damage,
instantly refunds its own cost and applies so much pressure with haste as well that your opponent is completely on the back foot from the turn it hits the field, and there's really very little reason not to try and play that as early as possible. So Nicolas, knowing what's in hand, but not really being in a position to play a Zidane on turn 1 and get rid of the Ritz or get rid of the Marsh that might be there, instead has to play a backup. Goes for Merlewib from Opus 2. Again, like Sascha, discarding a couple of mid and late game cards. Merlewib on entry draws 2 cards, and then you have to discard 1. Discards a copy of his team's promo, 1CP Pandemonium. Back over to Sascha.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see how Sascha goes about this. I don't think Nicolas has had the best of starts. He's went straight for
YRP is traditionally played with something like a 75% or upwards wind ratio, so opening on a water backup, it doesn't really help you play many other backups. It's pretty much just a filtering piece. Merlewib is very rarely in YRP as more than a one-of, just for those situations where your hand is otherwise unredeemably bad. Sascha has a very elegant turn 2 with another 2-cost backup as, prophesied. And then Nicolas plays Riku. Naturally drawing into the Riku is quite nice, I suppose, and it means that any searcher pains that he gets on subsequent turns can beeline for the much more powerful Yuna.
It does look quite unfortunate not to be able to get out and more on-curve play.
Yeah, it's a shame he couldn't really make use of all of his CP, but sometimes it happens, and it's seeing how the great players play around that little bit of a gap in variance sometimes. Sascha drops a turn 3 Aerith, which is an absolutely horrible card for YRP to deal with.
I mean, not only does it negate their battle strategy of ping damage, refunding all their CP will just make a summon live at instant speed, which is also very terrifying.
Nicolas is playing a rather exciting combination of backup Cecil and the new Rosa as a sort of a card filtering engine, but it's just not good enough here or fast enough here. I think that realising that he's going to be quickly outclassed by the superior text on Sascha's cards, he's having to play rather aggressively here and drops Starter Van, a card I've not seen in YRP for quite a while. I've seen it in YRP for Soya now and then, but obviously this is not a Fasoya list because Nicolas instead selects Citra from the top 5 cards revealed by Van.
Citra is an interesting choice with definitely the highest power available for the forwards, but
I think it's making the best of a fairly miserable situation. You want to kind of flood the board and maybe contest the Aerith and make Aerith feel obligated to block as early as possible, because killing it for YRP is actually quite difficult, and Citra just happens to be a pseudo 1 CP forward for refunding a card on entry. Back over to Sascha. Sascha still has that very powerful Ritz in hand. Ever since the explosive turn 1, he's not had to discard a single other card. That's the real power of Norstalen. There goes Ritz. You only discard a Ritz when you know you've got a plan for it. So Marsh, on entry, resurrects an FFTA character of cost 3 or less, but by far the most premium of those cards is Ritz, Legend Ritz from this set. Ritz will gain haste because Marsh is on the field, gains 1k, meaning it can attack into and threaten the trade with Van. I think that it's possibly an idea to trade the Van for the Ritz just to get it off the field, but the difficulty is the backups will activate on Sascha's side of the field. 3 backups activate because Ritz was able to declare attack, and Nicolas will have to respect the 1 CP Belias that's in Sascha's deck.
Yes, that would put you even further back behind it. I think it was wise to take damage, possibly getting the X burst.
Sascha is, however, able to use all of that refunded CP on 3 CP Zidane, a very powerful card for controlling the sort of tempo of the game by pacifying the most powerful cards in the opponent's hand. Nicolas reveals, amongst other things, 3 summons, a Barbarecia. It's a little bit too early for Barbarecia. Barb is one of the cards that's been in this deck since around about Opus 3 as a one-off situationally, just because it's a really powerful thing to play after Veilfor restands all of your backups and does a bit of ping damage across your opponent's board. It's a way of picking off some slightly unusual things, and I suppose playing around Aerith as well.
I suppose although it might be a not bad option for Nicolas to play it, it does get another body, but it's going to be one of the few ways he could actually kill a body if combined with any of his ping summons, such as Valifer. It might have been a way to deal with this situation, maybe not perfectly, but
Sascha instead goes for the 3 CP Zidane. By taking away Zidane, it's denying Nicolas the opportunity to police Sascha's hand in exchange for his own Zidane.
Yeah, I think that probably was the right decision. I think
if nothing else, it's a body that Nicolas can no longer play, staring down a pretty respectable board of 4 forwards.
Paying 3?
Is paying 3 for Brother. Brother can search for any category 10 forward. There's a bunch of fun things you can do, like Tidus, or even in the right deck you could fetch Sin, but by far the most classic uses of this card are to fetch the 2 different copies of Pain that see wide use. The Pain that's just hit the field, with the EX symbol up in the corner, can search for a Yuna or a Riku on entry. And I suppose that Nicolas, even in the face of these dangerous hate bears like Aerith, he can't really deviate from his own plan of trying to set up a wide board to eventually capitalise on a Fina and Veilfor combo.
The one to play the said Pain.
Again, it's a very necessary evil at this point.
Yeah, so it's getting down that Yuna will be able to make his Famfrits cheaper, which might be able to help him in this situation if he manages to
The
draw 3-1.
difficulty is that Sascha has got such a disposable body. Not in person, but I mean the 3CP Zidane is quite a disposable entity for any fanfrits that are cast. Nicolas also has to respect that if his hand size gets too low, then Sascha's Zidane is going to increase from 3,000 power to 7,000 power, and so he can't really discard to play the Unite even if he had the spare water CP this turn. I think that the most interesting thing for me about writs is that you're incentivized to make plays in main phase 1. Usually at a high level that's discouraged as much as possible, unless it's going to directly affect the combat that turn, simply because it leaves more tricks for your opponent to think about. But the nature of writs means that you get almost a completely separate pool of CP between main phase 1 and then combat and main phase 2. So it's pretty interesting to be able to take kind of 2 turns of value all at once, and that's something that I'm sure Nicolas wants to deny Sascha at the earliest possible opportunity.
Yeah, it really is a great lightning rod for a lot of things. If you don't strike it, it will.
I'm just going to say, courteously, Nicolas reveals his hand again there to remind Sascha what was in hand from the earlier on Zidane. It's not something you have to do, but at a high level of play, chances are he would have remembered it anyway.
Yes, I believe.
I think Sascha realises he's not particularly going to need his 7CP Brusca's final Aeon in this game, and instead the best thing to do is be highly aggressive with even more small forwards. Plays instead Terra. Terra gets back the Diabolos that was discarded on turn 1 for Norstalen.
Oh, yes, so I believe this is just going to be a situation where with the Diabolos he'll be able to clean up 2 forwards, break the van with the 5CP Diabolos, and then do a combination kill.
Reducing the shooter to 1,000 power, and then Terra does a 2,000 ping damage ability whenever a summon is cast by that player. I wondered actually if it was possible to attack with the writs first, get back those backups, and then maybe it would have been a little bit more elegant to do, being able to reuse the Meath and the Black Mage, but depending on what's in hand, maybe Sascha's got a plan for that anyway.
I mean, Nicolas does have a large hand, so I think he's just being cautious. He's in a really, really good position, so he doesn't need to...
He doesn't need to be efficient. Be it efficient for people who are behind.
So he's dealt 2 points of damage.
I think Nicolas is cautious of the fact that he's going to be staring down the possibility of taking 4 damage this turn, but also will be weighing up whether it's worth keeping that pain alive on the off chance that he can draw into a better pain, the pain that is free with Unit and Riku on the field, because we know he's got the Unit in hand. Sascha cast the summon in such a way because he wanted to play Y'shtola in second main phase. I'll bring up Y'shtola for you. It's a very powerful card for pacifying all sorts of summons and abilities, being a staple of competitive play since its printing in Opus 5, but this is a very pretty version from the Tifa Tin, as it's commonly known. Definitely recommend picking one up if you haven't yet.
It is a massive hate bearer for Wind. Once again, not only does it stop any of their potent on-entry abilities, it also does not take any damage from summons or abilities.
Nicolas, I think, realises that this is the turn that he has to do something quite incredible. So he's casting 1 CP Coollin, the target of which is not clear at this moment. Coollin removes the text box basically from one of your opponent's forwards. I can only imagine that would be Y'shtola here, so that Y'shtola can't negate something bigger that's coming up. It's quite common to see Coollin in YRP lists, pretty much just for Y'shtola, though the fact that Aerith is also on this field is a massive pain for Nicolas. No pun intended.
I believe it is Aerith that was targeted.
Oh, right, Sascha. Yeah. Sascha just helped us out there. They're on headsets, on a voice call to each other.
Valifor is trying to obligate Sascha into breaking one of them.
I think Sascha realises that the Zidane has kind of done his job by now and is worth dying for the sake of keeping Y'shtola for another day, in case Nicolas decides to go all in with a Fina or something in second main phase. It needn't even be second main phase.
Really does show the problem of YRP requiring the unit. He's not getting any of this CP refunded.
Yeah, used correctly and used in the late game, Valifor can literally generate your CP because it only costs 2 to play, but will activate 5 backups. But They're just too much pressure from Firewind here. Sascha allows the second Valifer to resolve with the blanked Aerith, meaning that Terra dies. Nicolas plays... the way he dropped the card down there, he looks a little bit defeated.
Yeah.
He discards Fina, realising that it's going to be too slow and too clunky a card facing down Y'shtola, so instead plays the 4th 2CP backup. It's going to take a really good EX burst here for Sascha to not lose. And even then, Unsa Ganashi means that a lot of EX bursts, if that was used preemptively, wouldn't work. Nicolas hits a Porom in EX to recur one of the summons from the break zone. Frankly, I think it's too little too late.
Yeah, there's just too much hate pairs. Aerith, Y'shtola would pretty much stop whatever he had.
And the 7th damage seals the deal. Thank you very much for watching. Please stay tuned for more Influencer Cup games. This has been Steve D and Andrew Campbell of the YYT.
Have a nice day.